welcome to Pan's Grotto on our Welsh riverbank. It's a cold but bright evening. The stars are out, the moon's out. It's really beautiful. It's a perfect evening for telling stories. This evening it's something a little bit different. This is a story called The Music Man that was published by Zimbel Publishing in one of their anthologies called On a Dark and Snowy Night. It's about new beginnings, and at this time of year, with Imbolc just past, a time to look for all the new shoots from the bulbs under the earth, the new buds on the trees. Spring is on its way, new starts, new beginnings. So I hope you enjoy The Music Man. On a dark and snowy night, Maria drove slowly along the forest road, her tyre tracks quickly covered by the blizzard. Taking the left fork at the Standing Stone, she edged deeper into the trees until the car was stopped from venturing further by fallen branches and rocks. The waning moon was half devoured and gave little light to her endeavours, but her head torch lit the way as she found the ring of trees. In the middle of the circle, Maria began to dig. Few cracks and crunches penetrated her ears, the forest wildlife tucked up on this freezing night. But when she stopped to breathe, she heard rustling behind her, tiny creatures scuttling beneath the brittle leaves. It took over an hour to dig the hole, even though the soil was soft and rich beneath the mantle of frozen earth. Her windscreen was iced over when she returned to her car, a swirling mass of frosted leaves decorating the glass. Her tears fell among the snowflakes as she dragged the canvas bag into the forest. She rested often, her shoulders burning and her back screaming, before she tumbled her haul into its resting place. More tears pitted the frozen carpet, not from guilt or fear, but sadness at the ending of such a brilliant young man. 16 years before, Maria stood on the pavement outside the Royal Academy of Music, willing her legs to stop shaking as she walked to the door. To her delight, smiles and nods of appreciation by the examiners followed her audition for the musical theatre department, so Maria floated on a cloud of elation along the long halls back towards the reception area. Music trickled from behind closed doors, but as she neared her destination, one tune stood out from the rest. It was her favourite piano piece. Turning the corner, she had her first glimpse of Alexander, crouched over the keyboard of a battered piano, caressing the notes composed by her beloved Debussy. As the music filled her, her physical body crumbled away, leaving behind just her senses. The ovation from the growing crowd stirred her from her bliss, and she joined them in their cries for more. Alexander Dragomirov was the youngest visiting professor of piano the Academy had ever hosted, and his willingness to give extra tutorials and impromptu recitals made him popular with the students. His main eccentricity, that his piano went everywhere with him, was met with practicality and cheerfulness. The specially adapted electric trolley he brought with him meant even the porters adored him. His first concert to the public in London sold out in under an hour. As a student of the Academy, Maria sat in the audience, mesmerised by the long, thin fingers that moved effortlessly across the piano keys as the complexities of Rachmaninoff's Third suffused the auditorium. She stood and roared with the crowd after the tumultuous climax, wooed like them by the mosaic of melody and effervescent joy that had engulfed her as Alexander played. Getting near Alexander was a challenge, but with careful planning and a good friend studying piano who had access to the professor's timetable, Maria was able to drop her bag at his feet outside the library. So thorough had been her practice the previous evening that the contents spread like a fan across the floor and Alexander's shoes, forcing him to bend to help her. and turning over the score on the top of the pile. "You're a student of piano?" Nose to nose, kneeling on the hall floor, Maria looked into intelligent green eyes, noted the luxurious lashes, and blushed as she bent her head to retrieve more belongings. "No, musical theatre, but I do play piano, a little, often Debussy." She heard the mumbled words bouncing awkwardly from her tongue and wished she practiced what to say to him, but she had no need to make the conversation. "I should like to hear you play." The gentlest of accents cosseted his words, yet she felt a spark of desire kindling deep inside her. Caught off guard, she said the word she didn't want to say. "No, you don't. I'm rubbish. Why would you want to hear me play?" "Well, you're amazing." Alexander handed her the final book and stood as she fastened her bag. "I too loved Debussy. He was a man misunderstood, not appreciated in his time. He was a rebel, like me, and we both shared a love for Beethoven. I go on. I am sorry." Alexander walked away, and Maria watched him go. 2 more attempts to talk to him succeeded, but both conversations were cut short by groups of fans, louder than she, and though she treasured each moment in his presence, following 6 failed efforts, Maria gave in, but she didn't give up. She loved her course, was inspired by her professor, and decided to focus on her studies, while still attending every one of Alexander's recitals, both in the Academy and in London. At the end of a year, Alexander gave the Academy a farewell performance and left for Paris. Maria mourned the loss of his presence, both the music and the man. As her final year began, close on the heels of a messy, unsatisfactory relationship, Maria donned her sensible pants. Not only were there assignments and deadlines to adhere to, but the country's top producers, directors and choreographers would be on the trail of new talent, and she wanted to be a performer on that stage. She focused her mind and honed her skills, making 2 short lists for second auditions the following year. But as Christmas neared, Alexander Dragomirov returned for a visit and swayed her from her original path. Alexander's apartment was a top-floor suite of a rambling Gothic pile, with a soundproof room on the roof. A lift from the hallway elevated people and Alexander's piano into the room. While watery moonlight seeped through the only triple-glazed window, he played, and she bathed in the music. Some nights, when rain blasted the glass, she sang Summertime, or Don't Rain on My Parade, or he played Bartok, discordant notes sweetened by the natural, violent accompaniment. They played and sang much, but spoke little. Though Maria added a first-class degree to her curriculum vitae, she no longer contemplated a career on the stage. She moved into a room in Alexander's apartment as a friend and personal assistant, helping turn away the constant clamours for his attendance. "I enjoy the music schools. Inspiring students is the job I love." "Don't perform then. Only play for the Academy and me." She saw a moment's anguish in his eyes before he blinked it away. "I must perform." For 6 months, Maria contented herself with Alexander's music and her role as secretary, till she secured an interview working with adults with special needs. On her course, she had met and worked with other theatre groups, providing opportunities for children, as well as those facing challenges. She remembered the excitement and delight on those visits, and most of all, she remembered the hugs. "I can still keep your diary sane, don't worry." She made it a joke. She had to. The disappointment and pain on his face were unbearable. "I haven't even got the job yet." That night she lay alone, looking at the ceiling, swallowing hard to disperse the lump in her throat. He hadn't kicked her out on the spot, and she was glad of that, but his obvious distress was unfathomable. Any gentle overtures she had made towards him had been ignored. resorting to more desperate tactics, had caused her to fall out of her cocktail dress in a most inelegant fashion, falling awkwardly to the floor from 6-inch heels. He had picked her up gently, inquired if she was hurt, and made her a cup of tea. Attempts to look deeply into 2 jade pools had been met with a grin and a shake of his head on more than one occasion. The lump was gone, but self-doubt crept through to her heart. Alexander might ask her to leave tomorrow, and she wasn't sure she could survive without him. Offered the job, and happy with Alexander's assurance that she could stay, Maria began the new term with confidence. By Christmas, her employers were happy, and her students' hugs voiced their appreciation. As she gathered up her cards and gifts and walked past the staff room, a familiar voice stopped her. "Miss Bannerman is a talented pianist too, you are aware? She is an accomplished theatre performer, but her gifts are much greater than that, yes?" "Yes, you're right, Mr. Dragomirov. Miss Bannerman is an angel, a true gift to our school. I have come to collect her. Perhaps you could tell her I am here. She may have left. Stella, can you see if Maria's gone, please?" Maria hurried back to her office and pretended to be locking the door as Stella approached. "Maria, thank goodness, Mr. Dragomirov is here to collect you." "Collect me?" That's what he said. The Underground took them to West London. They ate fresh pasta and Guido's special meatballs in a homely restaurant near the Strand. Snowflakes began to fall as they entered Trafalgar Square, and they laughed at the lions gathering snowy manes. Turning towards the river, the wind picked up. Alexander took her bag on one arm and offered her the other, and they clung together as snow covered their coats. As the snow eased, they walked beneath the lampposts, pointing out landmarks disguised beneath their ice-and-sugar frosting. They stood on the embankment, watching the lights of the city painting the water in bold luminescent strokes which were crazily fractured by the tidal river. Alexander took her gloved hand and gathered it to his face and kissed her palm. "You know I love you, Maria." She did. Though the usual rules of pursuing and dating had not applied, she sensed there had been a gentle, subtle courtship on his part. Trust and respect were mutual. The hand she loved, covered now in soft tan leather, held her face, and he kissed her. 1 month later, on a dark and snowy night, they arrived in the customised hire van at the log cabin in the woods. While Alexander eased the piano up the drive, Maria lit a fire and made tea. With the piano finally installed by the door, she helped him with his wet boots and coat and brought in 2 mugs of tea. Ignoring his mug, Alexander retrieved 2 bottles of red wine and 2 large wine glasses from the kitchen. He handed a brimming glass to Maria. "What's the occasion?" "We need to talk." That sounds ominous. Kneeling on the tufty rag rug, Maria poked the fire, keeping busy, standing logs like menhirs around the blaze to dry them out. In one practiced movement, Alexander pulled her into her favourite position on his lap, with her head resting on his chest. He handed her the wine glass again. "Drink." "I will. You talking?" "I am." Maria listened as Alexander told his story, and as each page turned, pieces of the jigsaw of his life came together for her, and curious words and actions on his part made such obvious sense. How had she not seen this before? How much he laughed. No laughter lines gathered at the corner of his eyes. Of course he spoke of Debussy as if he knew him. He did. They were friends, Alexander having some influence on his music when Debussy revisited Sweet Bergamasque. So the piano stops you aging. Playing the piano every day has halted the aging progress. What about your talent? Maria stroked Alexander's face as he shook his head, sadness souring his complexion. I don't know. And you were how old when your father brought you the piano? 7, but I didn't play it every day until I was 24. I studied at the St. Petersburg State Conservatory under the tutelage of Tchaikovsky. Father insisted I take my piano with me. In 5 years, I aged not one day. Maria crawled from the warmth of Alexander's lap and stacked the fire basket with logs, interspersed with twigs. She sat watching tiny sparks become flames in the initial sizzle before the chimney drew and the fire burned in earnest. The man she knew was not the man she knew, or rather he was even more so. He'd been alive longer than anyone should, witnessing the curse of war and bloodshed repeating over, while he'd lived inside his music, chained to his piano in fear of his life. How had he kept hidden? Was Alexander Dragomirov his real name? There were so many questions stirring up doubts, and yet, from beneath the amazement and fear rose contentment. Nothing had changed. Alexander was the man she wanted to spend her life with. In his arms, she drank her wine glass dry. "Thank you for telling me, my love. It must have been difficult for you. So let's not talk about it again." And they didn't. Not for 10 years. And in that time, Maria expanded the arts and theatre groups at her school, and many more in the area, recruiting like-minded staff and inspiring volunteers. They travelled across Europe, Alexander performing for adoring crowds, and Maria offering advice and training to schools wishing to embrace more art on their curricula. The apartment was their London base, but they bought a small parcel of land and built their own log cabin to which they retreated whenever they could. They celebrated Maria's 38th birthday with a skyscraper chocolate cake and the addition to their cabin of a hot tub on the veranda. Maria lay back in the frothing water, holding her champagne glass to the starry night. Snow was forecast, but for the moment the sky was clear and beautiful. "I can't do this anymore." She heard his words but chose to ignore him. It was her birthday after all. "Maria, I can't." She rolled over to him, landing against his chest and kissing his wet neck. She held his perfect jaw in one hand. "What's that, my love?" "I can't bear to live watching you age." She had seen him wrestle with guilt as she joked about dyeing her hair or needing a new bra with more scaffolding to hold up her sagging chest. She had kissed away his concerns that they could not conceive a child who would die before his father, and continued using her oral contraceptive. "You can't live without your music, Alexander. It's too big a risk to take, you know that. If you don't play, who's to say you won't age rapidly and crumble and die in front of me? I couldn't bear that." "That won't happen, I am certain." "I don't see how you can be. And if you can't play anymore—" They made love on the rag rug in front of the fire, both passionate and desperate in their seeking to absolve themselves from the decision they had made. As Maria lay wrapped in blankets, Alexander played Clair de Lune, tears spattering the keys, though his eyes were closed. Upstairs in their bedroom, she tucked Alexander into bed, beneath the triple-glazed glass panel, where the stars gleamed with aged assurance, and they kissed, stealing breaths from each other. Maria stood up. It was time to end Alexander's misery. With pictures at an exhibition blaring through his headphones, Alexander heard nothing of his lover's work. The largest wood axe was too heavy for her, but even an ungainly swing rendered it a sledgehammer. She cheered as discords of protest filled her ears. The medium-sized axe proved a triumph, and soon the wooden frame resembled firewood, save for the occasional piece of cream or black ivory. Everything except the soundboard went into the canvas bag, which she dragged to the car first. After severing every sinuous string, Maria hauled the metal board through the door as the first snowflakes fell from the sky. She leaned the soundboard against the woodshed, ready to take it to town for recycling the following day. On a dark and snowy night, Maria drove along the track until she met the forest road. The weather worsened, sleet and ice battering against the car. as she drove through the blizzard into the trees. Thank you for listening to The Music Man. If you enjoy stories from Pan's Grotto, do subscribe to the channel, won't you? And it just leaves me to wish you bright blessings this Imbolc, and I hope to see you soon. Good night.